Edison was finally able to force himself downstairs to cook Evangeline a birthday cake for her 18th birthday. He felt comforted to know that he had a plan in place to secure his entrance into fame and revenge for his dear wife. He figured it would be smart to keep up appearances with his family by law to not tip them off to anything nefarious happening in the coming months. Evie blew out the candles on her cake and wished for happiness for everyone in her family. They have been through so much at the hands of their mother. Enough was enough. Kate felt so blessed that she was able to celebrate a happy occasion with her sisters once again. The only thing missing was their daddy there to celebrate. Evangeline's young adult trait is calm. She has been through so much in her life thus far, and it has caused her to grow thick skin. Not much surprises or excites her anymore. Her aspiration is to have a big happy family. She desperately wanted the loving, functional family that she didn't have growing up. Kate insisted that she and her husband sit down and have a conversation. They haven't spoken but 5 words to the other since Atticus had been born. She told Edison as she felt him distancing away from her, and she wanted to know why. Edison stared at his wife for a long moment, unsure if she was seriously asking him this question. He explained that he knew Atticus wasn't his biological son. The child looked nothing like him. He called her a liar and floozy. Kate was dumbfounded by his words. She never imagined her own husband could be so cruel and vengeful. Edison then got angry at her willful ignorance. He went as far as to say that she knew all along that Atticus was Harrison's child, and she only stayed with him to make him look like a fool. Kate argued back, disgusted by this accusation. She told him that she never once claimed he was the father. He was the one who assumed. She didn't know the paternity of her son until he was born. Same as Edison. Edison refused to believe her. The trust had been broken. He demanded that she apologize to him. Kate refused. Their argument was a stalemate. Their relationship dynamic was now difficult. A few weeks after the explosive argument between Kate and Edison, it was time for Atticus to age into an infant. Kate was going to miss her son being this small and cuddly. Kate wished that Harrison had been able to hold his son when he was this little. She would regret taking that time away from him forever. Atticus's infant trait is intense. Hopefully this does not cause more tension within the household. All 3 of the Bennett girls were there to celebrate Atticus as he aged into his next phase of life. Each loved the little boy more than words. Judy was very good at reading people's faces and picking up on emotions. She felt the anger and resentment Edison felt towards Kate, and the longing her eldest sister felt for someone that was not there. To decompress from the stress she experienced from all of the large emotions, she took up ballet. She was nowhere near as good as Katie was, but she had fun attempting it. Atticus's favorite place to be was his playmat. He had become very particular about when he wanted to be held. Instead, he enjoyed trying to roll over and grab his toes. He was a determined child. Effie's goal was to make her sister's life easier. She took it upon herself to help Atticus with tummy time so Kate could have time for herself. She enjoyed this bonding time with her nephew. Now that Evie was an adult, she hoped that love and children were on the horizon for her. Judy was getting older now, so she no longer had to be her caretaker. She could make her own life. It made Kate sad that Atticus rarely liked to be held, but she couldn't bear not being close to him, so she played with him on the mat. His face would positively light up when he saw his mother's face. His smile warmed Kate's heart. Edison invited Harrison out for a drink at the Del Sol Valley Dance Club speakeasy so they could discuss business. Harrison was confused as to what business they could possibly have together, but entertained her notion anyway. Edison yells at Harrison for impregnating Kate and ruining his life. He tells the man that he must do something nice for him to make amends for this terrible injustice. Edison promises to even sign annulment papers once he starred in his first film. He explained that he had thought of a fair exchange for the both of them. Harrison makes all the necessary calls to catapult Edison into stardom. And Harrison gets his son, and the love of his life. Harrison lit up a cigar as he weighed his options. He did not want to reward Edison for being a lousy actor and the terrible person, but it was the only way to get his family. Kate would finally be his, and they could be loving parents to their son. Edison tells the other man that he hasn't had to decide, so he should think fast to incentivize Harrison. He promises that he would be reunited with Kate and Atticus that afternoon. He gets up and goes to order a drink. Harrison is left to ponder. After about 5 minutes, Harrison calls him back over to tell him that he's made a decision. Harrison chooses Kate and their son. If that meant giving Edison what he wanted, so be it. Harrison wrote the necessary letters and made the crucial calls to make Edison an overnight star. It pained him to do so, but he was finally getting the life he longed for. He was trading in his career and notoriety in the industry for a family. An hour later, Harrison was standing on the porch of his townhouse about to meet his son for the first time and reunite with his one true love. He took several drags from his cigar to calm his nerves. He had dreamed of this moment for months, but was terrified that it was all too good to be true. Kate hugged her son as she took deep breaths to calm herself down. She thought Edison had gone insane when he disclosed what he had negotiated with Harrison. Kate met Harrison on the second floor of the townhouse with their son in hand. She introduced Harrison to his son. For a man who was usually stoic with subdued emotions, he smiled widely with misty eyes as he held his son for the first time. Atticus warmed to his father immediately and didn't fuss as he was being held by him, which was unusual. Harrison knew right then that he made the right decision. Nothing else in his life compared to being a dad, not his career or his connections. Edison lit up a ciggy in the living room as his wife and her affair partner were rekindling their love for one another. It was truly the most bizarre and jarring afternoon of his life. Part of him was still angry that Atticus was not his son, but he forced himself to pay no mind to it. He was now starring in a Del Sol Valley film and was famous overnight. This part of his life will soon be a blip in his memory. Kate embraced Harrison. It had been nearly a year since they had spoken, and she missed him more than she could possibly put into words. Harrison felt the same way because instead of saying a word, he grabbed Kate's face in his hands and kissed her. Both had longed for this moment for so long. They could finally love each other freely, and they could be a real family. Harrison takes her hand in his and tells her he loves her. She says those 3 words with such confidence and ease. He promised her that he would be back soon after he made preparations to take all for Bennett's away with him. Kate wrote in her diary for the first time in a long time. She gushed about the once-in-a-lifetime kiss she shared with Harrison and their plans to run away together. For once, she cried happy tears. She would soon be rid of her awful, good-for-nothing husband. She and Edison finally got everything they wanted in life. She finally had her fairy tale love, and Edison had the fame he had always craved. Edison slept on the couch because he refused to be in the same room as Kate. This was only temporary, only until Harrison signed the townhouse lease over to him. After that, Harrison would be out of his life for good. His plan was in full effect. Harrison returned to the townhouse a week later to spend time with Kate. He had spent the week planning their departure to Sulani and finding accommodations for the 5 of them. He needed to burn off some steam. Kate and Harrison snuck into the bathroom to have some alone time. They had not been together since before she found out she was pregnant with Atticus. It felt foreign and familiar all at once. Kate couldn't wait to spend her life with Harrison. They would be leaving for Sulani in 2 weeks, and all these shenanigans with Edison would be a distant memory. Harrison clung to the love of his life. None of his business life mattered anymore. He was going to sell his profitable company to become a full-time father, husband and brother-in-law. Life would be so good. As Harrison walked home, he was struck by a taxi. The vehicle was definitely aiming for him, as many witnesses had testified. Kate knew that this alleged hit and run was orchestrated by her husband as revenge. Harrison was gone before he was able to spend a lifetime with his family. He was gone way too soon. The love of his life and his son would miss him for the rest of their lives. Kate fell into a deep depression after Harrison left her. She loved him so much and felt lost without him. How could she go on without him? She had trouble with showing her emotions after Harrison's accident. She felt so deeply that she was rarely able to show it. Official reports said that Harrison's passing was a tragic accident, but Kate knew better than that. Edison wouldn't have dangled a perfect life with Harrison if he didn't have a plan to take it away from her. Her husband unalived her lover. She couldn't prove it, but she knew it in her heart. This only added to the pain and anguish she was feeling. How could Edison do this to her? Her only crime was getting pregnant. She only did what Edison had told her to do. Harrison was an innocent party in their twisted games. He didn't deserve the ending he received. Evie took care of Atticus in the weeks following Harrison's passing. She knew her sister loved the man and was taking his loss extremely hard. The least she could do was love and care for her nephew. Atticus's crib was in Kate's room, but she tried to come and go without disturbing her mourning. She knew that looking at Atticus's beautiful face only hurt more because it reflected Harrison's. Evie worked with Atticus on sitting up on his own. He was a determined little boy and made the whole ordeal easy to deal with. It was a blessing that he barely knew his father, so he didn't have to mourn him the way Kate did. It hurt Evie's heart that her nephew would never have a father figure in his life to show him the way. When Atticus was already in bed, Kate tucked him in and kissed him goodnight. She was filthy. She hadn't bathed since Harrison's passing. She couldn't bear to wipe the last remnants of him off of her. She looked at her precious child and felt so many emotions. She loved him so much, but his face reminded her of all she lost. For now, she would love her son from a distance so she could mourn. Edison was unfazed by the untimely passing of his former agent because he was the man who orchestrated it all. He knew the stupid man would take the bait to be with Kate and Atticus. It was a foolproof plan. While his wife mourned the loss of Harrison, Edison rehearsed his lines for the lead role in his upcoming film. He got everything he could ever want. Kate was devastated and Harrison had ceased to exist. As the weeks progressed, Kate cried often. She was absolutely devastated. She didn't know how she could move on from this. She had an audition for a new film, but her heart wasn't in it. She wanted to be with Harrison. For the first time in her life, she failed an audition. The scene she auditioned with was a romantic scene, and she began to weep. Her career as an actress was over. After her audition, she decided to pick up the latest newspaper in hopes to see if the authorities had made progress in Harrison's investigation. What she read shook her to her core. Instead of reading an arrest for Harrison's hit and run, she read a tell-all article of her affair with Harrison. There was first-person accounts from her husband. Her reputation in Del Sol Valley was forever tarnished. Kate lit up a ciggy as she reflected on the past month. The love of her life was gone and her career as an actress was over. The article written about her was a scandal, and she would never work in this industry again. Her life was over. Kate was deeply depressed in the weeks following the tell-all article about her affair with Harrison. Her life was over. Edison had largely avoided his wife since then, but he wanted to bask in her devastation. That's why he went to the newspaper. He wanted to destroy her spirit. He also took this time to belittle her. He screamed that Harrison would still be alive and she would still have a career if she wasn't an adulterer or selfish. He admitted he orchestrated the taxi to hit Harrison. Kate knew that the only reason that Edison did this was because he had felt inferior to Harrison and he was jealous Kate was loved properly. She was stuck now, so she begged for his forgiveness. She would do anything he asked as long as this torment would cease. Edison got in Kate's face and told her that she was used up and he didn't want her anymore. They would stay married because he wanted to control her and because he got to keep her money. For the first time, Kate was scared of Edison. She had never seen this side of him and it frightened her. She didn't even recognize the man she married. Kate was not a big drinker, but she had turned to the bottle following the destruction of her life. She felt such deep pain that alcohol was the only thing to dull the suffering. She didn't see a way out for herself. She was trapped with Edison for the rest of her life. She couldn't have Atticus grow up around such a scary man. He deserved a better mother too. She started to think about a world without her. Evie and Judy could raise Atticus with love and safety. He could live a happy life without her. A mother's job was to keep their child safe and give them the best life. Maybe that wasn't with her. It made her sad to think about Atticus growing up without her, but it was starting to look like the only solution. Her heart hurt so much. She desperately wished she could wake up from this nightmare and her family could be happy and carefree together in Solani. Life was so cruel. Edison was so cruel. As the months passed, Evie tried her hardest to keep her family together. She noticed the change in Kate. This was the most broken she had ever seen her. She was worried. She baked a birthday cake for both Judy and Atticus, who were aging up into a teenager and toddler respectively today. She hoped that a celebration would help shake Kate from this sadness. Evie felt sad because her own birthday wish all those months ago did not come true. Her family was still broken and happiness was hard to come by. Judy was excited for her birthday. She was happy for a distraction from the hurting her sister was feeling. She felt everything her sister felt and it was awful. She wished for her sister to find peace. Judy's teenager trait is that she is sexist. She had seen how her brother-in-law treated Kate and came to the conclusion that all men were awful. Judy's teenage aspiration is to become a famous singer. She hoped that focusing her energies on something outlandish will distract her from the sadness in her home. Kate came downstairs for the first time in months to celebrate her son aging into a toddler. This would likely be the last birthday she witnessed and she wanted it to be special for Atticus. She tried to memorize his smile as he blew out his candles. Atticus's toddler trait is that he is inquisitive. He has always been a determined child, so now he will add explorer to his list of quirks. Atticus's first exploration was of the bathroom toilet. Now that he was fully mobile, he explored everything that he could get his hands on. He splashed the water until his heart was content. Now that Judy was a teenager, she took it upon herself to be her nephew's buddy. She felt like it was her responsibility to make him laugh and shield him from the sadness of the house. Edison's plan had worked. Because of Harrison's endorsement, Edison was starring in the next feature film. It was an added bonus. He no longer had to move out of the townhouse since the man left everything to Kate and Atticus. It was getting more difficult for Kate to even get out of bed in the morning. She no longer had a purpose in life without acting. She loved her son more than anything, but she didn't want him to see her like this. It wasn't fair. To him, her sickies didn't even help her to feel better anymore. Nothing did. After Atticus's birthday, she began to make mental notes for what she needed to do to get her affairs in order. Her only priority was to put into writing that Atticus was to be raised by her sisters if something were to happen to her. Kate had held on as long as she could. It had been nearly a year since Harrison was taken from her. She wanted to be reunited with him once more. She wrote letters to each of her loved ones, and one for Edison. She poured her heart out in these letters. She praised Evie for stepping up and raising Judy when she couldn't. She told Judy how proud she was of the young woman she was becoming. Those letters were the difficult ones to get through, and she cried throughout writing them. The easy letter to write was Edison's. She told him that this was his fault, and she hoped he suffered every single day for the rest of his miserable life. Kate could barely get through her letters to Atticus. She wrote him a letter for every birthday and special events like high school graduation and his wedding. It broke her heart she would not bear witness to them. After she was finished writing the letters, she found her son and hugged him tightly. She took in his smell, his little arms wrapping around her, his sweet kisses, everything. She told him he was the best thing to ever happen to her, and she loved him more than anything in this world. She knew her sisters would take good care of him, and he would be happy. She went in for one last hug. She hoped this day wouldn't define his life and he would be able to move on because he was so young. Maybe he would forget about her altogether. Atticus could feel his mommy's sadness. He didn't know why she was so sad, but hoped his hugs helped some. Kate went to Evangeline next. She gave her a kiss on the cheek and thanked her for being such a good sister. Evie went on a tangent about a new thing that Atticus was doing, but Kate barely followed the conversation, her mind on other things. If Evie kept talking about her son, she was worried she would lose her nerve. Kate interrupted her sister and asked her to promise that she would always love and look after Atticus like he was her own. Evie was taken aback by Kate's words and asked if everything was okay. Kate told her everything was fine, that she just needed her to promise. Evie did. Kate ran into Judy on her way to her bedroom. All she could muster was telling Judy she loved her and gave her a hug. Kate walked up the stairs to solidify her fate. Each step felt like a dagger to her heart. She hoped her family would not hurt for too long. She needed to do this. Kate began to feel overwhelmed by what was about to happen, so she snuck into the speakeasy to grab herself one last drink. Kate drank her final glass of wine as she looked back on her life. Her life overall had not been a happy one, but she experienced so much love along the way. Her daddy, her grandparents, her sisters, her friends, Harrison, and her baby boy. She was devastated that this was how her life would conclude, that she could no longer live like a caged animal. Her son and sisters would be happier and she would be free. She could see her daddy again and the love of her life. Among the pile of letters was her will. All of her earnings would go to her son and guardianship would be given to Evie. He would be taken care of for life. Kate was gone. She was no longer shackled to her husband. She was no longer anything anymore. Nobody had seen Kate for hours. Edison wanted to gloat about his leading role and continue his torment of his wife. Instead, he found her unresponsive. He was in a state of shock at the sight. He tried to find a sign of life, but found nothing. His clothes became drenched, so he took them off, unsure of what to do. He had wanted to make her life miserable for what she did, but he never thought this could happen. He felt immense guilt that this happened. He had been angry with her, but he loved her. He always would. His screams of anguish caused Kate's sisters to run upstairs to see what was going on. Judy couldn't believe her eyes. Her sister was gone. She had just got her back, her heart broke in pieces. After Kate was collected, Evie cleaned up the mess that was left behind. She didn't want Atticus to stumble upon it. She also didn't want the reminder that her sister was gone. She had been strong for her sister and nephew, but this was a loss she would never recover from. She loved her sister dearly, and she knew something was wrong. She could have done something. Atticus was too young to fully grasp what was going on. His Aunt Evie told him that his mummy had gone to heaven. He saw his family crying all the time, so he figured heaven was bad. He played with the last toy his mummy got him to feel close to her, and Evie said his mummy wasn't coming back, but he hoped she was wrong. He missed her hugs.